Welcome, Fright Night Vault listeners. Tonight we step into a quiet place that remembers every name it has ever taken. Subscribe to the vault and never walk alone again. The road to our house turned to gravel 2 miles before the mailbox. In summer, the stones rattled like rain beneath the tires. In late autumn, when we moved in, the gravel sounded different. Hollow, as if we were driving over the lid of something buried. We told ourselves it was peace we wanted. No neighbors, no traffic, no glare bleeding through the curtains at midnight. Just a low-roof farmhouse, a stand of bare maples, and the empty pasture falling away into the dark hush of a shallow ravine the locals called the Bell Hollow. I am Evelyn Hale, 34, married to Jonah, mother to a 15-year-old who can burn a grilled cheese from both sides and call it art. We had a plan when we signed the papers: fresh paint, a garden in spring, weekends on the porch, listening to wind skim the pasture. Our daughter Lena rolled her eyes at the slow internet and swore she could hear the house breathing, which we laughed at the way parents laugh at things that deserve listening. That first week felt like a held breath, the kind you don't notice until you finally exhale and realize you were braced for something to go wrong. Nothing did. Not exactly. At night, the temperature dropped hard. We layered quilts and watched our breath fog the air before the furnace kicked in. The floors creaked with their own memory, boards flexing with the cold. When the wind moved across the hollow, the eaves let out a low, steady note, like a bottle's mouth when you blow across it. A sound you couldn't hum back to. A sound that seemed to hum you. We learned the rhythm of the place, the kettle's blunt rattle at dawn, the loose latch on the mudroom that thunked whenever the house settled, the timed clack of the kitchen clock that filled the quiet between sentences. I started naming the sounds so they would belong to us. That's the stair stringer. That's the pantry hinge. That's the wood popping as it warms. The third night after we moved in, I woke to a soft tapping. Not a knock. Not the random tick of expanding heat pipes. This was measured. 3 taps, a pause, 3 again, somewhere below our room. I checked the time, 2:14 a.m., and listened while Jonah slept, mouth open, breath grainy. The tapping stopped. I waited. The house answered with its 1,000 old bones, and the wind carried a far, thin whistle across the hollow. I told myself it was the latch. It would always be the latch if I needed it to be. In the morning, I checked the mudroom. The door was closed, the latch set, the sill dusted with a thin scatter of maple leaves arranged like a spill pattern from an invisible hand. I swept them out and told the quiet, not today. While Jonah drove to the hardware store for insulation and Lena claimed the upstairs office for her art, I walked the fence that bordered the ravine. The pasture fell away faster than it looked from the house, the angle steep enough to warn your heels. The hollow wasn't dug like a trench. It was scooped, as if something heavy once lay there and got up slow. Dry grass rustled along its edges. A black ribbon of creek water broke the light in half. I stood listening, and a small deer lifted its head from the far brush and studied me with the flat patience of prey that hasn't decided what I am. "Them maples'll snap in a good storm," the mailman said later, tipping his cap at the slope. "Stay clear of the hollow, Miss Hale. Sound gets strange there. Carries wrong. Carries wrong." I nodded and smiled and tucked that phrasing away where you put things you hope you won't need. We fell into a soft orbit. Lena asked if she could paint her room the color of bruised peaches, and then did it herself, streaks and all. Jonah argued with a stubborn length of ducting in the crawl space and came up swearing there were more spider webs than air down there. Evenings, we played cards because the streaming would glitch with the weather. I noticed that if we left the porch light on, moths never gathered. The bulb burned clean. The air drew nothing. That weekend, a fog bank rolled through the hollow before dawn and sat there until noon. From the kitchen window, it looked like a soft animal sleeping in the ravine, the kind of cold white that eats the edges of things. Behind it, the maples stood like a row of old men deciding whether to speak. I watched the fog breathe in and out and told myself it was the wind. It would always be the wind if I needed it to be. "Mom," Lena said, standing barefoot on the tile. "The bathroom mirror. It keeps fogging up, even when the water's cold." "Vent fan's probably shot," I said. "We'll replace it." "Also," she added, squinting toward the hollow, "someone keeps saying my name. Like a whisper. Like, not mean. Just like they're practicing it." I turned the faucet on full and reached for the skillet, making noise as if that were a kind of answer. The mirror thing we could fix. The other. I didn't like stories that started in the walls of a house because you couldn't get outside the walls without leaving your life behind. You can't fix a whisper. You can only starve it. So I told myself, new place, new acoustics, wind through vent stacks, the creek's little throat. A word can happen by accident. It will always be an accident if I need it to be. The second week, small things shifted. A bowl not where I left it. A hallway picture frame turned slightly, the nail steady. The kitchen clock losing 3 minutes and then catching up on its own while no one watched. I caught myself pausing at thresholds, as if I were entering a church, and the pause became habit. At night, in the layered quiet, I began to hear what sounded like breath moving along the ceiling joists. Not the furnace kicking, not the whisper of ductwork. A living cadence. A long exhale that went nowhere and then returned from a corner you couldn't point to. I breathed back, steady, and told my shoulders to let down. The bed springs recorded every order I gave my body. Jonah laughed it off with the farmer's shrug he was still learning how to wear. "Old houses talk," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "We'll get used to its language." Lena started sleeping with her door open, the way kids do when they don't want to admit they are measuring the dark. I would find her in the morning with charcoal smudges down her wrists, sketches fanned over the carpet, trees bent toward the same point, river stones stacked into a narrow throat, a low oval shape drawn again and again, like a mouth without lips. When I asked, she said, "It's a hill. It looks like a hill." Then softer, "It sounds like a word." On the 9th night, I woke at 2:14 again. My phone lit the exact time like a joke told twice. The measured tapping had returned. 3 taps, a pause, 3 taps, closer now, as if the house were learning where we lived. I slid out from under the quilt. The boards beneath my feet held their breath. I moved down the hallway by memory to avoid the loose plank. The tapping stopped as I reached the top of the stairs, as if it had been timed to deliver me there. The moon had put a thin blade of light across the lower landing, and the banister's dust caught it like frost. "Jonah," I said, though I knew his breathing from anywhere and could hear him behind me in the bedroom, steady, ignorant of the house's small arithmetic. Something answered me. Not a voice. Not at first. It sounded like the mouth of the hollow when the wind crosses it. Low, rounded, the shape of a vowel wanting a consonant to hold on to. Then the vowel found one. Soft, precise, practiced. "Evelyn." It said my name from the bottom of the stairs. Not loud, not dramatic. The way you say a word you've tasted in your mouth for a very long time and are relieved to finally swallow. I stood there with the rail under my hand and every useful thing I knew about houses coming to nothing. There was only the shape of the word in the dark and the particular way the air felt after. Thinner, as if the room had exhaled and forgotten how to breathe in again. I took 1 step down. The landing creaked the same way it did every day at 4 in the afternoon when I carried laundry or summer bedding or a box of things we couldn't throw away yet. The familiar sound made the unfamiliar one worse. "Evelyn," it said again. Closer, almost curious. As if the wall had leaned in. As if the house had a throat and was clearing it. Behind me, a floorboard shifted. The good noise of the bed accepting weight. Jonah murmured my name in his sleep, not awake to mean it. For a moment, I could pretend that was all it had been. An overlay, a trick of separate sounds colliding, a word made from weather. It would always be the weather if I needed it to be. I stood there and did the only thing I could think to do in a place that did not promise help. I said my name back into the dark staircase, steady as a password I was testing for fit. "Evelyn." The house paused. The hollow paused with it. I felt the pause like the lean of a body I couldn't see. A listener pleased you had finally admitted you were in the room. From the far end of the hallway, Lena's door eased open on its own hinge and stopped. The thin light of her phone screen glowed a pale rectangle on the floorboards. A breath drifted down the stairs and back up again, learning the shape of the house the way you learn a mouth. I gripped the rail until the cool of it burned my palm and listened while the house waited to see if I would say anything else. When the morning came, I found no proof of what I'd heard. No prints on the stairs, no loose nails or splintered wood. Just the faint drag of something across the lowest step, like dust had been shifted by a hand that didn't care to leave a mark. Jonah joked it was probably settling. He said it the way men do when they mean stop thinking about it. But Lena wasn't laughing. She'd drawn again, this time, not the hill, not the hollow. It was a face, not a human one. The lines were long, curved inward, like the features were pulling themselves into the skull. Where the mouth should have been, she'd shaded black, dark as tar. And in her small handwriting at the bottom, she'd written one word: listen. I asked her what it meant. She said she didn't draw it. She just found it that way in her sketchbook when she woke up. That's when I stopped pretending. It was on the 5th night after that when the air began to change. Not colder, not warmer, just heavier, as if the rooms themselves were filling with invisible water, and we were learning to breathe inside it. The house's sounds grew sharper. Every board creaked with memory. Every door hinge exhaled when you passed. The clock ticked slower, syncing with something older than time. And through it all, that voice came back. Never loud, never direct, just underneath. Like hearing your name from the other side of a wall you can't reach. At first, I thought I was dreaming. Then Jonah heard it too. He'd been in the basement checking the pipes when he came upstairs pale as chalk, lips trembling with words he couldn't make sense of. It said my name, he told me, but it wasn't you. It came from the crawl space, like it was underneath the house. We didn't go down there again. The following morning, I noticed something wrong with the walls. Not cracks, more like veins. Thin lines, dark and raised beneath the wallpaper, pulsing faintly when the furnace kicked on. I pressed my hand against them and felt warmth, a heartbeat that wasn't mine. By the time Jonah came to look, the lines were gone. Just paper, smooth, empty, like it wanted to be believed by one of us at a time. Lena had stopped sleeping altogether. She'd sit on her bed drawing until dawn, her eyes glassy from exhaustion. One night, I asked her what she was sketching now. "It's not me drawing," she whispered. "It's the house." I just hold the pencil. I looked. The page showed our family at the dinner table, but behind us stood a tall shadow that bent toward each of our heads like it was listening. The thing's face was blank, smooth as bone. No eyes, no mouth, no mercy. That was the night Jonah suggested we leave for a few days. Get air, get distance. But the moment he mentioned leaving, something inside the house shifted. The wind outside went still. The power flickered, and from the back hallway came the low sound of hinges straining, as if a door we hadn't opened in years was pushing itself free. We searched the house top to bottom, every room, every closet, every corner. And then, behind the pantry, we found it. A narrow wooden door we had never seen before, hidden behind a false panel. The paint was fresh, like someone had covered it only weeks ago. No lock, no handle, just the shape of a door waiting to be known. Jonah pressed his ear to it. At first, nothing. Then, a slow, rhythmic tapping. 3 taps, a pause. 3 again. The same pattern I'd heard that first night. We stood there, neither speaking, and then the air changed again. A deep pressure filled the room, like standing beneath the weight of a thunderstorm. Jonah backed away. "It's not wind," he said. "It's not pipes." He was right. It was breathing. The sound came from behind the door, wet, strained, patient. A living thing waking up to our discovery. "Evelyn," it said, the same way it had before. Low, certain, grateful. The walls around the door shuddered once, like a body flinching under a heartbeat. And when I blinked, the veins were back. Only this time, they were everywhere, crawling across the kitchen, running beneath the paint, pulsing like roots feeding something buried alive beneath us. Lena screamed, the lights died, and in that instant of darkness, I swear I felt fingers brush the back of my neck, cold, deliberate, tracing the outline of my throat. When the lights returned, the door was open. Inside, the space was smaller than it should have been. A crawl cavity lined with black stone, too smooth, too deliberate to be foundation work. At the far end, a small wooden chair sat facing the wall. And on that wall, scratched deep into the surface, were dozens of names, faded, burned, overlapping each other like the ghosts of signatures. The newest ones still bled where the letters had been carved. Evelyn. I didn't scream. I just stood there, reading it over and over until I could feel the grooves in my own tongue. Then something moved behind me. A breath, a weight, a whisper I could feel against my skin. It was never in the walls. It was waiting for a voice. I turned. The door slammed. The dark took sound first. Not silence, worse than silence. It was the kind of quiet that bends your heartbeat until it sounds like footsteps in your own chest. I tried to breathe through it. The air was stale, thick with the taste of copper and dust. Somewhere beyond the closed door, Jonah was shouting my name, but the walls swallowed every word before it reached me. The space inside that hidden room felt wrong. The angles didn't meet where they should. The corners leaned away as if they were trying to escape themselves. The chair was still there, facing the carved wall. Only now, the names weren't still. They were shifting, slow, deliberate, dragging one letter into another as if the wall was rewriting what had been buried there. And among them, my name pulsed faintly, carved deep and breathing. I told myself to move, but the air pressed back. It wanted me to stay, to listen. From somewhere below the floor came a faint rattling, a soft clatter like bone against bone. The smell followed, earth, wet wood, and something older. Something like decay that had been waiting too long to be noticed. The voice came next, not a whisper this time. Not a word slipped between walls. It filled the space behind my ribs, low and close. You called me first. It wasn't a question. It was a memory spoken in my own voice. The wall shivered. A thread of dark fluid seeped from the carved letters and ran downward, spreading along the floorboards until it reached my shoes. Warm, alive. When I stepped back, the room seemed to breathe with me. Inhale, exhale. The veins along the stone pulsed to the rhythm of my pulse until I couldn't tell which belonged to which. Something in the corner moved. The chair turned. Not fast, slow, deliberate, scraping against the floor in one long, dragging sound that made my teeth ache. It faced me now. Someone was sitting there, a shape, half-formed, skin the color of wet ash, hair matted against the scalp like dried moss. Its eyes were pits that reflected the thin light leaking from the crack under the door. It didn't blink. I tried to speak Jonah's name, but the word dissolved before it left my mouth. The thing smiled, small at first, as if remembering the shape, then wider, too wide. Evelyn. It said my name, like it owned it. Like it had been practicing my tone for years. I stepped back, hand searching for the door. It didn't move. It didn't even exist anymore. Just a stretch of black wall that trembled when I touched it, warm and pulsing like skin. The creature stood, its limbs unfolded in slow jerks, as though the bones inside didn't quite match the body carrying them. When it spoke again, the sound came from everywhere, through the stone, through the floor, through my throat trying to resist. You let me speak. You breathed me in. You kept my name. The lights flickered. The walls swelled outward, breathing with it. And the sound that came next was not a voice. It was the deep rumble of 1,000 throats exhaling at once, every carved name on that wall releasing its breath. They were all saying one thing: stay. The floor gave way. When I woke, I was lying at the bottom of the hollow. The moon was red behind a film of cloud, painting the field in the color of old rust. The house loomed above the ridge, every window lit with the same dull glow, pulsing like a single slow heartbeat. Jonah was calling for me somewhere inside. I could hear the panic in his voice, the thud of his feet as he moved from room to room. But another voice spoke with him now, so close to his own that I couldn't tell which one was the man I married. I tried to stand. My legs trembled like they'd forgotten what they were for. The grass under me was soaked, not with rain, with something warm, thick, and moving, as if the earth itself had started to bleed. When I looked down, I saw them, hands, dozens of them, pressing up through the soil, not clawing, just rising, waiting. The same dark veins that had crept through the house now webbed across the ground, running from the base of the hollow straight toward me, glowing faintly beneath the skin of the earth. The air buzzed, low and electric. A wind moved through the grass even though the trees were still. And somewhere above, from the open windows of our bedroom, I heard Lena's voice, soft, uncertain, calling my name the way a child calls for help in a dream she hasn't woken from. I tried to answer, but the sound that came out wasn't mine. It was the voice from the walls, low, ancient, grateful. The hollow answered back. 100 whispers overlapping until they became one. Not the house, not the ground, you. The veins beneath the soil pulsed once, bright red, and every buried hand opened. The earth inhaled, and before I could move, the ground around me began to rise. Not dirt, not mud, bodies, pale faces pushing through the soil, eyes open, mouths full of black water, all whispering, all shaping the same word I had heard from the staircase. Evelyn. They weren't trying to grab me. They were reaching toward something behind me. I turned. The house was watching, windows wide, glowing. The front door stood open, though the wind was dead. Inside, the darkness moved like a tide, and in its center, standing at the threshold where the light from the hall met the red from the sky, was my daughter. Her hair hung over her face. Her voice was small, steady. Mom. It's saying my name now. Then the lights in every window went out. The next thing I remember was rain. Thin at first, cold drops that cut through the red haze still hanging over the hollow. It didn't wash the smell away. It made it sharper. The bodies were gone by dawn. No soil overturned. No print of a hand. No trace of the veins that had glowed under the earth. Only the hollow itself, wet and glistening, as if something large had just exhaled beneath it. Jonah found me kneeling there. He said I wasn't breathing when he reached me. He said my eyes were open, but somewhere else. I told him I heard Lena scream. He said she was asleep in her bed the whole time. That was a lie, even if he didn't mean it to be. Because when I climbed the stairs that morning, her room didn't smell like sleep. It smelled like rain from the hollow, cold and metallic, the kind that stays on your skin long after you've dried off. Her drawings covered the floor. Every page was black. Not painted, not shaded, just filled, edge to edge, as if the paper itself had been burned from the inside out. And in the center of the room, her easel faced the window. A single sheet left half-finished. Our house, drawn in perfect proportion. But above it hung a figure, stretched thin like smoke, its mouth open wide over the roof. Its hand touched the upper window, the one that looked into her room. It was smiling. We left that afternoon, or at least Jonah thinks we did. The moment he turned the key in the ignition, he said the road looked endless behind us, like a tunnel carved through fog. But I don't remember the drive. I remember turning to watch the house shrink in the rearview mirror and realizing it wasn't shrinking. It was following. Each curve of the road bent wrong, the distance stretching and folding until the house stood exactly where it had always been, right behind us, patient, waiting for us to admit we hadn't really gone anywhere. Jonah doesn't talk about it now. He fills his days with work, anything to drown the quiet. But quiet doesn't drown, it waits. Lena's different. She doesn't draw anymore. She just listens. Sometimes at night, I'll catch her sitting at the window, head tilted toward the trees, mouthing words I can't hear. When I ask what she's doing, she says, "It's learning new names." 2 weeks later, the house sold. A young couple with a baby. They didn't ask questions about the damage in the crawl space or the new paneling near the kitchen. They said they liked the character. I mailed them the keys and told myself it was over. But last night, just before 3, my phone lit up with a number I didn't know. No ring, no vibration, just the screen, bright and waiting. When I answered, the line was filled with static, soft, rhythmic, almost like breathing. And then a small voice whispered through the noise. Not Lena, not Jonah, a woman. Afraid, she said, "Is this Mrs. Hale? We just moved into your old house. Something keeps tapping behind the pantry." Then a pause, a long inhale, and the voice on the line changed. Low, calm, familiar. "Evelyn, subscribe to the Vault and never walk alone again. Listen in the dark. Watch with the lights off. Never answer when the house says your name. We upload daily, and one night the story may be yours."